Los Angeles is my home. It's also the epicenter of the Church of Scientology. I live within walking distance of 4 different Scientology centers, and I've heard everything you've heard. It's a cult, a scam, science fiction disguised as self-help, disguised as a religion. You've heard plenty from Scientology's critics, those who reject the church, the religion, and everything that it stands for.
Tonight, the documentary that Scientology does not want you to see.
In your film, you talk about the prison camps.
It's run like a paramilitary organization.
But there are other voices you haven't heard from. Scientologists who've left the church, but who continue to practice the religion. True believers who are seizing for themselves the power to define one of America's newest faiths. I'm traveling the world to investigate the reformation of the Church of Scientology.
Reza Aslan is an author and scholar.
Reza Aslan is a scholar of religions.
Best-selling author Reza Aslan. As a scholar, as a Muslim, as an American, what is your reaction?
I've been studying the world's religions for 20 years, and now I'm gonna live them.
I have a confession to make. I have a soft spot for Scientology. As a scholar, I'm fascinated by new American religions, and whatever else you think about Scientology, it is arguably the most successful new American religion of the 20th century. And yeah, I've heard the same things that you've heard. I've read the books, I've seen the movies. I'm familiar with the allegations of corruption and abuse, and I don't discount them. Though I will say that if corruption and abuse disqualified you from being a religion, there would be no religions.
My scholarly interest in Scientology often gets me labeled as an apologist for the religion.
Wonderful to see you all.
And in fact, I do often find myself defending Scientology at dinner parties. Yeah, I'm that guy.
Do you consider Scientology a cult?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you consider L. Ron Hubbard to be a charlatan?
He's a science fiction writer.
L. Ron Hubbard writes that 75 million years ago, there was an evil galactic emperor named Xenu who took all these Thetans to planet Earth, and that's who we are. We are these Thetans.
Look, it's based on science fiction. So was a lot of the Bible. If there were such things as investigative reporters 2,000 years ago in the Galilee, there'd be no such thing as Christianity. I want to see Lawrence Wright go up to Jesus and be like, so how many people did you feed with, like, how many loaves? 5 loaves? Because I spoke to Joab, and Joab said that he himself brought like 12 loaves, you know.
I've even gone on TV and argued with critics of the church.
I don't think it's fair to refer to Scientology as a cult. I mean, really, the difference between a religion and a cult tends to be how long the religion lasts. Christianity was a cult for 300 years.
It usually doesn't go too well.
I totally disagree.
I want to jump in and say something.
When I decided that I was going to do an episode on Scientology, I reached out to the church. I wanted them to be a part of it, to have an opportunity to have their voices heard.
It's basically an exploration of religious faith from the perspective of believers in that faith. I left a message for you previously, also sent you an email. I really do want to represent the voice of the church, but I do need someone who's willing to speak with me about it. Answer the phone. Why won't anybody talk to me? Unfortunately, no one from the Church of Scientology wanted to be a part of this episode. So instead, I reached out to a fellow academic and scholar of religions, Donald Westbrook, one of the few experts on Scientology who's not himself a Scientologist.
Would you put Scientology sort of in the same category that you would put other religions?
Absolutely. Scientology to me is an example of another American-born religion. What really is unique about it is it's a product of the culture in which it was born. The religion of Scientology came after the mental health movement of Dianetics. Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, was published in May 1950 by L. Ron Hubbard. It was basically a form of talk therapy. Hubbard thought that all of the traumas that you have over your lifetime, engrams as they're called, are stored into the reactive mind. Dianetics is a technique to specifically address those traumas and to erase them, and the idea is that you produce what he called the clear, that is clear from your reactive mind and in full possession of your analytical mind.
I guess this is where auditing comes in, right? So auditing is the way that you get clear.
Exactly. But as people were looking farther and farther into their own personal histories, they found that they could go back to the womb. And they went back even farther to past lives. And Hubbard realized he was onto something that wasn't purely mental health, but it translated into religion.
So what, that indicated to him that these engrams are stamped in the soul?
He called it thetan, which is basically the same thing, the idea of a soul that transmigrates from body to body, lifetime to lifetime.
So far, it all seems pretty straightforward. According to Scientology, we are all eternal souls that have infinite lifetimes. In each one of these lifetimes, we've picked up traumas, engrams, that we still carry with us, and which affect our behavior. The way to clear these traumas is through auditing.
So, Hubbard is dead, and, you know, as is often the case with most religions, when a prophet dies, one of his followers takes over, and in this case, it's David Miscavige, right? So he's now, I guess, in charge. A lot of people keep saying he's changing the religion.
So this goes to a very important concept in Scientology, of the technology of Scientology. The technology, or the tech of Scientology, refers to the canon that Hubbard created, as well as to its correct and pure application. The name of the game in Scientology is to keep pure the tech of L. Ron Hubbard of LRH. So the allegation against Miscavige is that he is essentially interpreting the tech. It's a dispute about who gets to say what L. Ron Hubbard really meant.
Every religion deals with these things. Who gets to speak for the religion? How do you actually interpret the founder's intentions? Who has the authority to define the faith? And I mean, all of this stuff is, for those of us who study religion, very familiar.
Absolutely.
Over the last few years, this argument over who controls Scientology and how to practice it has led to a number of sects and schisms and breakaway groups. I've traveled halfway around the world to Haifa, Israel, to visit one of these groups.
If you want to start your own Scientology mission, you have to first pay the church an upfront fee for its trademark. And then you pay for the right to license its material, the auditing, the training manuals, etc. And then you would pay the church a portion, a percentage of the fees that you bring in for these services, usually about 10%. It's kind of like a McDonald's. Now, imagine if your local McDonald's decided one day that it didn't want to have anything to do with the corporation anymore, that it had failed in meeting certain expectations of its customers. And so it was simply going to become independent. Oh, it would still sell Big Macs, it would still use the secret sauce, but it just wasn't going to have anything to do with the corporation any longer. That's what's happened here at the Dror Center.
The Dror Center started out as a Scientology mission specializing in training auditors.
So this is where people study, to become an auditor.
Nice to meet you all. Nice to meet you.
Think of auditing as spiritual counseling with the help of a machine called an e-meter. An auditor administers a very specific set of routines and questions, all of which were decreed by Hubbard himself.
This is my living room. Welcome to my kingdom.
Tammy and Danny Lenberger both rose to enormous heights in the Church of Scientology. Tammy was the church's highest-rated auditor in the world 2 years running, and Danny was instrumental in introducing Scientology to Israel. But they became disaffected by the church's actions and now operate their own thriving independent Scientology center about 90 miles north of Jerusalem.
You guys were very devout members of the church. You were in good standing. I mean, you're one of the top auditors in the world. What happened? How did you go from this sort of loyalty to the church to suddenly beginning to change and think differently about it?
You know, Scientology was fun in the 70s and the 80s when we got in, and then at the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s. The pressure from upper management was more and more and more pressure.
The pressure for what?
For money. They want to come here and do donation evenings, fundraising evenings, and we didn't like that. And then you cannot audit this way, you have to audit that way.
They change the technology all the time. And I wrote many letters. The last letter I wrote, I said, "Dear sir," very polite letter, some things I don't agree with. And on 28 June 2012, we were approached by this lady, and she handed us an envelope. I knew what it was, a letter telling us that we had been declared an SP.
Being declared an SP, or suppressive person in Scientology, is somewhat akin to being excommunicated from the Catholic Church. You're declared an apostate. You're cut off, not only from the church, but also from its members. However, because the Church of Scientology claims trademark and copyright on materials used to practice the religion, splitting off from the church put the future of the Dror Center in jeopardy.
So now you've been excommunicated from the church.
Yeah.
And of course, the church claims to have a copyright.
Can you imagine trading copyright in Hinduism?
That's what they would say. I mean, they said that you were in violation of their copyright.
Yeah, and after we left the church, they asked us to burn all the old books.
And they told us to burn
them. Yeah. But we did this research, and then we found out that all the technology, including the confidential OT levels, it's all available.
All the materials are available on the internet.
So you could actually access
this
material.
And then I can deliver it.
So we're just breaking the monopoly.
You feel that what you're doing here in Haifa is more of what LRH originally intended. It's the pure version of Scientology.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. This is the true Scientology.
I'm only loyal to one person, and that is Ron Hubbard. Ron Hubbard is the source of Scientology, and I have no doubt that if Ron Hubbard came around, he would hug me and he would say, "Danny, Tammy, thank you so much for what you're doing."
What's happening with these independent Scientologists, these believers who are seizing for themselves the authority claimed by the church to define the faith, to interpret it, to individualize it, should sound familiar. After all, this is exactly what happened in the Christian Reformation. Until the 16th century, the Roman Catholic Church was the sole interpreter of Christianity in Europe. But rumors of corruption in the Vatican and a sense that the church was becoming greedy drove a dissatisfied and rebellious group of Christians to break off from the church, to begin to interpret the faith for themselves. The Protestant Reformation, as it became known, swept through Europe, and dozens of churches, Methodist, Presbyterian, Anglicans, were founded, each with their own singular interpretation of what it meant to be Christian.
I'm on my way to meet Trey Lotz. Trey joined the Church of Scientology in 1969 and very rapidly became one of the church's top auditors. In fact, he achieved OT8 status.
OT8, or Operating Thetan 8, is currently the highest level that a Scientologist can reach in the church, in what L. Ron Hubbard called the bridge to total freedom. The bridge is a guided step-by-step process through which a Scientologist can achieve salvation. OT8 is a kind of godlike status that only a very few Scientologists have ever achieved.
And then in 2007, Trey was suddenly excommunicated, thrown out of the church, declared a suppressive person. But he is still a devout believer in Scientology. In fact, he continues to make a living auditing people out of his house just a stone's throw away from the church. Which is kind of funny if you think about it. It's a little bit like if a Catholic cardinal was excommunicated and decided to live right next to the Vatican.
and continue to hear confessions.
How exactly did you come into confrontation with the church?
The whole environment became a lot more controlled and restrictive. I think it was just part of a general trend of, you know, cracking down on independent people and getting rid of old-timers.
Did they actually ever charge you with anything?
You know, they said I was making stuff up, you know, which I didn't think was true. I had references for everything I did. I think it was mostly just they wanted to run control on everybody.
Right. So you just left?
Well, I got kicked out, and then once I looked around and realized it was, you know, nicer out here, I decided to stay.
Right. Now, the people that you were auditing in the church, when they found out that you had been excommunicated, they basically thought, I'd rather stay with Trey than find somebody else?
Yeah.
And then you just kept going?
Yeah, no problem. Like 2 years ago, I did more hours than I'd ever done in 43 years.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Have you had past life experiences?
Oh yeah. Sure. My first auditing session, you know, it was like I had my eyes closed, and then I kind of froze, you know. And he said, "Well, what's that?" And I said, "Well, that's the car I was killed in."
And it felt absolutely real.
I can still feel it.
And how many have you had since then?
Several lifetimes. A pretty good grasp of the 1800s, you know, all the way back to the 1700s, and then earlier lifetimes, things like that.
When you pass from this lifetime, what happens then? I mean, your Thetan has accumulated all of this knowledge. Are you reborn a Scientologist?
You're reborn as yourself. And one of the goals of auditing is giving a person more control over what happens to him after he leaves the body, before he gets his new body. So you will remain conscious.
So, did you ever get a chance to meet Hubbard?
Yeah, I was on the Apollo, which was the original flagship, and I walked out on this catwalk. And around the corner comes Hubbard and his two aides, you know. He put his attention on me and he said, "Hi." In that instant, it's like I was looking into outer space. And I looked into the eyes of many people. I mean, 4,000 or 5,000 hours of auditing by that time. He just had a vast space, and it was very clean. There was a lot of life in it. There was a lot of vitality in it. Since Hubbard passed, there was a big cultural change in the church. So it's become less kind, you know, less flexible.
Seems like you've got a lot of emotion involved with the state of the church. Are you confident about the future of Scientology? Not the church, the religion.
Oh, absolutely. There will be people wanting to get trained outside the church and really doing a good job, you know, and doing a job that really helps people and apply it the way it's designed to be applied, you know. The tech will survive.
Such an intense experience being around these independent Scientologists. I mean, many of them, this is really the first time that they've come out of the closet, and you know, they know the risks of it. They understand that what they're doing could get them into a heap of trouble with the church, and yet they want to talk, they want to speak out. And these aren't just critics of the church. They're not, you know, what the church would refer to as apostates. These are people who are very devout believers who are making enormous sacrifices for their faith. Hi.
Hello.
Randy?
Yeah, hi.
Reza. Nice to meet you. Randy and Tim were once two of the church's best trainers of auditors. The Church of Scientology claims to be the only institution authorized to train auditors. After Randy and Tim were excommunicated and declared SBs, they decided to continue to train people to be auditors, but on their own, outside of the church. They've agreed to take me through some of the training exercises that they do with their students. These training drills,
are ones that Hubbard himself created.
Yes.
Right?
We're going to start with TR0.
TR0.
Which is confronting. Have the student and coach sit facing each other and say and do nothing.
Okay.
You get the idea. TR0, start.
This is not a staring contest. According to L. Ron Hubbard, as you advance in Scientology, you are no longer controlled by the world. You are in control. This exercise is all about learning to control one's body and one's mind in relation to another person. Normally, this exercise can last hours.
All right, that's it. How's it going?
Pretty good. I can't imagine doing that for hours. So what's next?
Okay, next we're going to do some bull baiting. And the purpose of it is to help you to get over certain things that might trigger you if you're in an auditing session.
And you're going to try to break my concentration.
Okay? You ready?
Yes.
So TR0 bull bait, start. You're not originally from this country, are you? What boat did you come over on? Oh, you didn't come over on a boat. You probably flew. You're one of those fancy rich kids that got to fly over here, right? Right? What makes you think you could write a book on Jesus of Nazareth? You're a Muslim, man. Are you resisting reacting? Are you trying not to react really hard to anything I say? Boo! 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 Good. Okay, that's it.
Okay.
Okay.
I have to say, I feel like you were kind of easy.
Yeah, I can get rougher.
Should we try?
Let's turn it around.
Let's turn it around. Me try it on you.
The flow. Yeah.
Well, I'm feeling a little awkward.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't, I don't want to say anything mean. I don't want to.
Well,
go ahead and say something
man.
mean. It's okay.
Pull out all the stops.
Yeah.
Pull out all the stops.
Oh, yeah, all the stops. Yeah.
Say anything you want, insulting, whatever. Totally fine. I can take it.
You sure?
Yeah. Yeah.
TR0 bull bait, start. Hey, Randy. Does the church know where you live? You're a heretic. You think LRH is proud of you? It's not proud of you. He thinks you're a bastard. If he were here, he'd probably smack you in the face. But this whole religion thing, look, I mean, it's a science fiction, man. It's not even a religion. It's not even a religion. It's just a cult. You believe in Xenu? Is that right? You know, everyone makes fun of you, right? Everyone's making fun of you about that, right? Xenu horse. Okay, end training.
Okay. I feel so bad. I want to hug you. I didn't mean any of that.
I know.
I didn't mean any of that.
I know.
I really didn't.
Are you concerned about the church's attacks against people who not just leave, but especially who speak out?
I'm concerned about it.
Do you feel as though this interview might change things for you?
It might. It might.
How does that make you feel?
Well, I'm prepared for it. Before I left the church, I was actually working undercover for the intelligence arm of the church.
You were a church spy?
I was. I was recruited to pose as a disgruntled Scientologist and infiltrate a meeting of independent Scientologists. I was sent there to take names. All of a sudden, I turned around in the auditorium and Trey Lotz was sitting in the front. I had known Trey Lotz for 30 years as one of the top auditors in the LA area. I later reported back to my handler and I said, "Do you know that Trey Lotz is with these guys?" And they said, "Oh yeah, he's really a bad guy. He's a suppressive person. He's been declared, blah, blah, blah." Well, this is what started waking me up. I better check this out because it doesn't make sense.
Do you feel as though that the church was taken away from you?
Oh yes, it was taken away from me, but Trey encouraged me after I left the church. He said, "Hey Randy, why don't you just start auditing again and training?"
Anyone can just leave the church if they want to.
Yes, certainly you can.
You can.
But
what if you have a daughter or son who's on staff?
My daughter disconnected from me.
She disconnected from him when he left.
Yeah. Doesn't call me, won't talk to me. Yeah.
Have you tried to reach out to her?
Sure, but it just, it's a wasted effort. When you say you got declared, boy, that's it. Boy, the axe has fallen.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you introduce her to Scientology?
Yeah, sure. You know, I've been a Scientologist
since before she was born.
Before she was born. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So she sort of grew up with it, you know.
Did you know that that was going to happen?
Oh, yeah.
Can I ask you why you felt it was, considering the consequences, so important for you to say your piece?
You know, all I can say is really it's a point of integrity. I couldn't be in the organization and see the things that I saw going on and not know that there was something wrong. What's more important, you know, that or some personal pain and discomfort and familial, you know, rejection or something, you know. And I chose the religious aspects of it as being more important.
Lots actually agreed to audit me on camera. As far as I can tell, this is the first time that an auditing session has been filmed for mainstream American television.
Central to the auditing experience is the E-meter. This is basically a very simple lie detector that many Scientologists believe helps an auditor pinpoint the moments of pain and trauma that are below our level of consciousness. A current of electricity runs through 2 metal cans into your body and back to the machine. A needle on the E-meter reads your body's resistance to the current. Every movement of the needle means something very specific to the auditor, who's been trained, in some cases for decades, to interpret it in relationship to the person's spiritual state.
I have to say I'm kind of nervous. I mean, if auditing is basically a kind of psychotherapy, I'm not sure how I'm going to react to it, or what kinds of questions he's going to ask, or what that's going to dig up. I don't know. It's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Make yourself comfortable. You may or may not need those pillows there. Have you pick up the cans and see if those are comfortable for your hand size.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, great. What is it that you have your attention on a lot, or what areas would you want it to improve?
I have a difficult time expressing sadness. When I'm sad or emotionally hurt, rather than responding with sadness, I respond with anger. It's definitely the worst quality that I have, I think.
Well, probably the first thing would be good to do is to run some processes that have to do with opening up. One of the primary techniques is a repetitive process. I give you the question or the command, and you give me your response, and I acknowledge it and give it to you again.
Okay.
And we just do that till there was a release on it. A release would be on the meter. It would show up as a free needle. So the needle goes like this.
Mm-hmm.
With you, it might feel a little bit of a lightness or a sort of an uptonedness that would occur, or a sort of expansion of your space, something like that.
Okay.
This process is called first postulate process. And the command is, what isn't looking at you?
What isn't looking at me?
Yeah.
My dad? My dad's not looking at me?
Okay, good. All right. What isn't looking at you?
My family.
Good. All right. What isn't looking at you?
Everybody who's not in this room.
What isn't looking at you?
I guess the world.
Needle released on that. How you doing on that one?
It's good, yeah.
Some of the questions, I describe them as koans. Koans are these sort of Buddhist riddles
like what is the sound of one hand clapping? A koan is a question without an answer. The fact that it doesn't have an answer forces you to dig deep, and whatever you come up with is what's important.
There's something called certainty processing. We'll do some of those. So get the idea there's something wrong with my emotions.
Yeah, I have that idea.
Good. Get the idea there isn't anything wrong with my emotions. Get the idea there is something wrong with my emotions. Get the idea there isn't anything wrong with my emotions.
Felt like we were just kind of zeroing in on a feeling over and over and over and over again until it just didn't really have any potency.
Get the idea there's something wrong with my mind. Get the idea there's nothing wrong with my mind. Get the idea it's safe here. Get the idea it's not safe here. Get the idea there's something wrong with me. Get the idea there isn't anything wrong with me. Get the idea there is something wrong with my emotions. Get the idea there isn't anything wrong with my emotions. Get the idea there is something wrong with my emotions. Get the idea there's something wrong with my emotions.
There were a few times when it was going on and on and on, and so I would try. I was like trying to get the floating needle, and I couldn't do it.
All right, get the idea there isn't anything wrong with my emotions.
And then I would sort of give up trying and forget about it, and then slowly it would just kind of happen.
Good. Needle's floating on that.
I kept seeing myself turn into the Incredible Hulk. And then it became harder and harder to maintain that image.
Well, you've released certain things, and that means that there's some potential for expansion or a new pattern or, so you just be there with it and, let it unfold.
It's not like I came in here feeling bad about anything in particular, but I feel a little more uptone, as they would say. I feel uptone. Yeah, I feel better. My hands are a little bit tingly.
In Reno, Nevada, there's an auditor named Ray Robles who leads a group of independent Scientologists who call themselves the Free Zoners. Many of them have moved to Reno to be closer to Ray. Ray is very different from other independent Scientologists. His practice has moved far beyond its roots in the church. He's taking it further. He's innovating. As a result, his version of Scientology is evolving. It's becoming something new.
I joined the church 1969. When I got in, I was a college student, didn't have very much money. But yet I was able to buy a meter, and I was able to do it. And I was able to go clear, and I was able to afford it. It was $25 an hour. And then when a new regime came in, Hubbard passed, Hubbard retired, they kept doubling the money. So I paid like $750 to do the clearing course to go clear. Now it costs like, I don't know, $6,000, $7,000 or something like that.
And is that around the time that you
decided to leave? Yeah. Well, a lot of people left in '83. I didn't leave till 1990. A lot of people left because they didn't like the new people coming in. They didn't like what was going on. They didn't like the new materials. They didn't like what was the changes.
When you left, did you right away start auditing and giving services to?
I never stopped.
You never stopped.
And I've been active on this for 20 years in, 20 years out.
Do you feel as though you're more connected to what Hubbard was trying to do?
No, we have two different purposes.
What was his purpose?
I think his purpose was to help mankind, and he did by bringing this stuff, and he gifted it to us, and that's why I'm able to do it. My purpose line, which I recalled in between life, my mission is to master this technology, to export it to other realms, other places, other planets. I came to planet Earth. I haven't been here that long, just a few lifetimes. This is my last reincarnation on Earth. I plan to leave it.
You think that this is your last?
Oh yeah, I don't belong here.
Yeah.
after this time. I would take it with me because anytime you master something, you got it, you know?
To master it, to develop it, to better it.
I'm furthering it.
Innovating upon it a little bit.
And I'm rediscovering some things that have been lost.
Except that not just the Church of Scientology, no church wants improvising.
Well, that's why I don't belong in any church.
Yeah.
The really exciting thing about being a free zoner, being any kind of reformer, is that you're no longer bound by the rules of the church. You can innovate and syncretize and borrow and mix and match and take a little bit from that religion, take a little bit from that idea, put it all together, make something new, and you don't have somebody up there saying, no, that's not how it's supposed to be, that there are rules, that there's dogma, that there's doctrine.
Ray has agreed to give me a brief auditing session, his own take on a high-level Scientology process that's rarely performed.
And this is called Superpower Rundown Series.
Yeah, these techniques are not, that I'm going to give you, are not used anywhere.
But not even in the church?
No. And after we do it, you'll see why. Okay, you pick up the cans there. So I want you to assume the viewpoint that you personally have no limits.
I can do that.
Very good. Very good. How's that feel?
I feel like, okay, I've got a viewpoint.
Once you close your eyes on these, get the idea of mankind assuming the viewpoint of no limits. Now get the idea of you causing all mankind to assume the viewpoint of no limits. You caused it. Now get the idea of whatever you think God is or the divine, assuming the viewpoint of no limits. Get the idea of you causing the divine spirit of us all, or God, whatever you think that is, that you causing that to have no limits. Take a deep breath, let it out. In obsession. How's that feel?
Energizing.
Yeah.
Ray thinks of himself as not just innovating, but improving upon LRH and the church. There's this moment where he was talking about how his bridge is different than the church's bridge. The church has 8 OT levels, and he has 9. So he's literally one-upped the church.
So you first get through the bridge, and then you can do the sort of the higher, perhaps more
manifesting, telepathic, all these powerful things that sorcerers do or whatever have done.
So in a sense, it's like you feel as though you're unearthing this stuff that was there.
There's this thing Hubbard called milestone 1. He says, when you reach milestone 1, you will be free from Scientology and from me. I'm at milestone 3.
I hear that kind of talk a lot from mystics who will say, for those of us who have broken free, we abide by a different set of rules. Do you sometimes think about it that way?
I am that way. Definitely. Transcended.
Most thinking people can differentiate between a church and its believers. When the Catholic Church was embroiled in the pedophilia scandal, most people were able to separate the Vatican and its bureaucracy from the little old lady who goes to church on Sunday to pray for her grandchildren's health. Why then is it so difficult for many people to differentiate between the Church of Scientology and the religion of Scientology? Religious institutions want to present themselves as the sole arbiters of the faith. But that's not any more true about Scientology than it is about any other religion. And there's no better proof of this than the independent Scientology movement, this reformation of Scientology.
You know, recently some films were made about Scientology, exposing all the bad things in the Scientology organization, exposing, you know, whistleblowing. It's all important. But they ask the question, why intelligent people got stuck in this place, seeing horrible things happening and still staying there and not leaving? And that's how the word Scientology became a bad word, you know? I mean, Scientology means knowing how to know. But if they realize that there is so much in Scientology, which is true and strong, and frees people and frees souls, then I think people will follow, and the independent field will grow and can become a great movement, together with other great movements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Funny, the more time I spend with these independent Scientologists, these free zoners, the more I realize that we are witnessing a Scientology reformation. A religion can only expand and grow if individuals feel free to make it their own. And that's what's happening here. These independent Scientologists believe that they are the true believers, that the church has veered off course, that they are the ones who are remaining true to the original foundations built by L. Ron Hubbard. And it doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong. What matters is that all religions go through this process. All religions deal with this conflict between individuals and institutions over who has the authority to define a faith. And so maybe that, more than anything else, proves that Scientology is not so different after all.
I believe in L. Ron Hubbard. I believe in the truth of what he's done, the sincerity of what he's done.
I believe that the technology that L. Ron Hubbard developed, his life's work, is what is important.
I believe that it's not really a matter of belief if something works or not. It either works or it doesn't.
I believe people should be doing Scientology with fun and gusto.
I believe that Scientology in the free zone is wonderful.
I believe very strongly that to be right, you don't have to make others wrong.
I believe, no, in fact, I am certain of the technology developed by L. Ron Hubbard is of benefit to mankind.